to never lose hope. And the beautiful thing about hope is not something that comes from outside. The whole world can collapse, but hope is something that you find inside of you. And I know...
Maksan Manho. Hi， 大家好。差唔多2年前咧，做過一個麥散問號嘅。
It's been 10 days since that terrible incident happened in Beirut. How can you describe the situation in Beirut now?
Like destruction all over.
Yeah.
First, like for the first few days, it was like the shock, you know, an explosion.
Warmth in my heart to be in Hong Kong again. So thank you for having me for this interview.
黎巴嫩係中東，係一個好美麗嘅地方，可唔可以介紹一下啦？你嘅國家呢？
Let me tell you how Lebanon is special. First thing, it's biblical.
Yeah.
We talk about it in the Bible a lot. And the first reason why the Bible talks about it, it talks about its beauty. We see high mountains, beautiful snow, we have a beautiful beach, we have rivers, a very fertile valley. Also, the culture is very unique because it's in the middle between the East and the West. Across the sea, you get to Europe or you get to Africa.
You get to Africa.
You know? So it's a very strategic place.
Yeah.
And up until today, we still have this mix between the Western culture and the Eastern culture, and also between the Muslims and the Christians.
And the Christians, yeah.
So yeah, John Paul II said about Lebanon a very beautiful sentence when he came, that it's not just a country, it's a message. So, and I think it is.
喺黎巴嫩嘅宗教嘅情況咧，天主教啦、回教徒啦，有咩關係咧？
As I said, it's a mix of culture,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful thing and not an easy thing to live at the same moment. So let's say about the number of Christians, it's kind of decreasing for the last 30-40 years, but it's still a very Christian country. And also by constitution, the president has to be Christian, and then the prime minister and the head of the parliament, Muslim, Sunnite and Shiite. Anyway, it's a structure, it's a specific political structure combined with denomination. And the Christians have a lot of variety of different denominations between Orthodox, Eastern rites, Latin, and it's also very rich. The variety is beautiful to discover.
我哋天主教禮儀啦、拉丁禮啦，定係你哋自己嗰個禮儀咧？
The majority are Maronites.
Yeah.
I am Maronite.
Okay.
Originally, I am bi-ritual because I am originally Maronite, but now in a Latin congregation of the Community of the Beatitude, founded in France. And then you got the Orthodox Church. So you got Greek Catholic and Greek Orthodox, Armenian Catholic, Armenian Orthodox, and the Latin. There are very few actually, the Roman Latin. This is the kind of the variety you can find in the Catholic and non-Catholic Eastern churches.
Very interesting. 近年啦，黎巴嫩都面對好多唔同嘅挑戰，可唔可以同大家分享一下呢？
As I said, has a very difficult situation between cultures, religions, and geographically.
Yeah.
Which makes it very rich and a message, as I said, but also it gives us a lot of challenges.
Challenges, yeah.
So that's why we witnessed a lot of wars in the history of Lebanon. And the last civil war ended in 1990. Of course, we had golden ages in the 60s, 70s, maybe 50s. And then the war that became civil war, it was one of the hardest.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, we had peaceful time. But for 30 years, up until 2019, we found out that these peaceful years were actually not going that well as we thought. An explosion of the political situation when we realized that a lot of the wounds and the divisions that they happened in the war weren't actually healed.
Yeah.
And we didn't work on it. It's not easy for us. We need more other generations to reconcile, you know, denominations between them, the people. So a lot of divisions actually stayed, you know, for 30 years. We found out that the leaders of the country, they're also the same leaders that they were there during the war. So we found out a lot of corruption. What happened is that we had the revolution.
Yeah.
Also it divided the country. There's no black and white. It's a little bit like Hong Kong. It's not easy to take part, but we're seeking our identity, if you want. So a lot of divisions, a lot of gray. But it started with the revolution and the coming out of all this reality. You know, we realized that we're not reconciled.
Yeah.
A lot of corruption. So a crisis of identity and trust. And this trust immediately led to an economic crisis. When we lose trust of the institution, everybody wanted to withdraw their money and they declared bankruptcy. They actually closed. So people up until today, they don't have access to their money. Can you imagine? It's been 3 years. All the middle class became poor in a few months. All the middle class. Then the elections happened, but also not in a very healthy way. But we're improving. We're trying to reconcile a little bit of the government. We're already suffering and we had COVID. And in 2020, in August 2020, we had the Beirut explosion. So this is also a huge chapter and wound and trauma in the whole country.
我哋嗰陣時呢，個個都好心痛啊，好唔開心嘅，係唔知要用咩説話嚟形容我哋嘅感覺啦。但係我亦都知道好多香港呢都有為呢件事祈禱啦、助款等等。
The biggest non-nuclear explosion in history of humanity, actually. So it's still very fresh, and we need many years. We need a lot of help for the trauma. Actually, it's getting worse now, 2 years and a half, psychologically speaking.
Yeah.
Because, I remember very well our interview.
Yeah.
And I remember when I watched it again, and I remember that I was able to talk about things that now I can't talk about because it's too it hurts too much. So because the trauma works in different ways. Reconstruction, the people, they built their houses back. A lot of people are back to their houses, but still empty houses, kind of a phantom city. It's not living again, you know? Things are rebuilt because we had a lot of help, but it lacks life. It's still a little bit dead, kind of. At the same time, since the explosion, we witnessed a lot of God's grace. We all went to the city to help. One of my roles that lasted for weeks and weeks is to visit people just to listen to their stories, to see how they are. I knocked the door and I was like, how are you doing? Even people sometimes they open the door and they were like, oh, we already have help, don't worry, we don't need anything, Father, thank you. And I was like, oh, I'm not proposing any help, I just want to see, how are you doing? And they were like, oh, okay, come in. You know, they didn't want me in when they thought I was giving them money, but when they knew that I was there to just pay a visit, they were like, okay, come in. And in their stories, I witnessed a lot of graces, a lot of protection, a lot of healing, a lot of consolation, and they were suffering with a lot of dignity.
Yeah.
You know, they were beautiful people, Muslims and Christians. They suffered with a lot of dignity. So a lot of solidarity, as you said, from Hong Kong to Beirut, from all around the world, and it's continuing, and we hope that it's going to continue because we need that.
青年喺當地嘅都受到好大嘅影響啦，如果可以咁樣講。其實而家情況係點樣呢？
What concerns the young people mostly, you know, is about their future, a security for their future. And since they lack that a lot of them are leaving the country. A lot of them. Now it's a little bit slower. They slow down, and some of them are deciding to stay.
集體嘅創傷後，點樣幫助青年人跨越呢？
Spiritually, the first thing that we need to work on with such a big suffering is the meaning of the cross, which is not easy because at the same time, we have to admit that suffering is not good in itself.
Yep.
You can't go and say, oh, it's fine if you're suffering, you know? Like, they wouldn't accept that.
No.
And it's not normal to say that. And we know that we don't like the cross because of the cross. We like the cross because of Jesus. And we like Jesus because he went through the cross. So, the second thing is to give them hope. I work with the university, youth groups, ministries, and as Community of the Beatitudes, we have a beautiful youth group around us that are spreading also a lot of hope around them. The joy of fraternal life, we create a lot of relationships between them. The mission, when they serve, they're also happy because they find meaning.
Yeah.
And the deep spiritual link to God, you know, like the deep prayer of praising, and we're a lot of the charismatic renewal, our community, so the meaning of how to lift up your heart through prayer and praising and singing. And this gives a lot of hope.
Yep.
The fourth thing is to feel the belonging also, as I said. Mm-hmm. So this is why the identity, to belong to a movement, is very important, to belong to a community, to a spirituality, to a group of people. Lebanese people are always open to abroad. We like, also as I said, you know, like we have the sea in front of us.
Yeah.
So a lot of links with Europe, like now Hong Kong, when I tell them what I'm doing and how youth groups are praying for them, it gives them a lot of joy.
We need to open ourselves, and this is one of the best ways to learn in life. 神父，你有乜嘢想要同香港青年人講呢？
The first thing I would say, like, to never lose hope. And the beautiful thing about hope is not something that comes from outside. The whole world can collapse, but hope is something that you find inside of you. And I know also that the Hong Kong people are also seeking their identity, but it is not from outside elements that you will find it. You will find it once you know who you really are from the inside. And this hope that comes especially from faith and from within, nobody can take it away from you.
The most important thing is to have that hope, because hope that comes from inside, nobody can take it away from you. It was a pleasure to have you among us.
Thank
and
you.
May God bless you always.
You too. God
Thank
bless
you very much. Oh, bye-bye. Joy
Bye.
من أقل من سنتين كانت حياتنا طبيعية. رح على الجامعة نشتغل نظهر ننبسط.
اليوم لبنان عم يمرق بأسوأ أزمة اقتصادية بتاريخه. خسرت عملتنا أكثر من 200% من قيمتها.
من وراء هالشي 70% من الشعب صار فقير. تتخيلوا ما عنا كهرباء، ما عنا مي، ما عنا بنزين، إلا إذا معنا كتير مصاري منجيبون برايفتلي.
الدواء مقطوع، حتى البنادول. مصرياتنا موجودة بالبنك، بس البنك ما بدها تعطينا إياها.
بكل البلاد في فساد، بس الدولة بتحاكم الفساد. نحن الدولة والفساد واحد. بال2019 ولعت ثورة، بس القمع كان أقوى منه. واليوم الناس صارت أفقر من إنه يكون عندها القوة تاون.
أقسى شيء قطع علينا هو انفجار بار بيروت ب4 آب. أضخم انفجار مش نووي بالعالم. راح ضحيته أكثر من 200 شخص، 3000 جريح، تروما بسيكولوجيك، وتدمرت عاصمتنا.
نحن الشبيبة أكثر شريحة متأثرة باللي عم بيصير. مش قادرين نتطلع لقدام، مش قادرين نحلم ببعدين. كل المصاري اللي عم نتعب ونجمعها عم نكبها على أبسط حقوقنا.
بس بقلب هيدا الوضع عم نعيش شي كتير حلو. تعرفنا على جماعة التطويبات. C'est une communauté contemplative et missionnaire. نشأت بالسبعينات مع الكوميونوتي نوفيل بعد فاتيكان 2.
فيها يونيتي وبنفس الوقت ديفرسيتي دابيل. رهبان، خوارنة، راهبات، فامي، إلايك، كلهم عايشين مع بعض. موجودة بكل العالم، وعنا هون موجودة بلبنان بغرزوز.
مع الجماعة بلشنا نجتمع كجروب صغير، ناس عم تفتش عقلها. نصلي سوا ونتشارك خبراتنا.
قدرنا نلتزم معهم وصرنا البياتيتود جامعة.
تتخيلوا بقلب كل شيء وصفناه في شبيبة عم بتسبح، تمجد، ترقص، تفرح، تعمل ميسيون.
بالرغم من كل شيء حياتنا إلها معنى.
هيدا نحن، ونحن بحاجة لدعمكم تنقدر نكفي.
دعمكم بيأمن لنا حق المساعدات اللي عم نقدمها، بيدعم لقاءاتنا، بيأمن لنا بنزينات لحتى نقدر نروح على جروب البريير والميسيون، لأنه ما عندنا public transportation.
عم نشتغل أعمال يدوية made for a cause. اشياء صغيرة وبسيطة بس بتحمل صلاة وحب كتير. إذا بتشتروها بتكونوا عم تدعمونا، وهيك
نقدر نسافر نلتقى بشبيب برات لبنان، تكون تيمونياج فيفان انه ما في عاصفه ما بتسمع كلمه الهنا اللي بيقدر يهديها.
Karam,